What's going on, Imperials? It's Emperor Cubone here. Pokémon come in all shapes and sizes, but it's not unheard of to see these same inspirations come up again. Sometimes that's good, and sometimes it can be bad, but it's sure to come up at least once or twice a generation. However, sometimes these ideas are a bit too similar, and the design choices get saddled with the same typing as before. This isn't always a detriment, but it does make things a little bit stale. But a simple remedy for this is to apply a different type. A great example of this is a crab-like Pokémon. Gen 1 gave us Krabby and Kingler, and then later we got Corphish and Crawdaunt. Some people might even broaden this to crustaceans and include the Clauncher line as well, but whether you do or don't, they're all still water types. But this was altered in Gen 7 when we got Crabrawler. Now obviously I hate Crabominable, but the fact that this was a new crab that was a different type from all of the rest made it feel groundbreaking even if it really wasn't. So what other ruts can we get these Pokémon out of by suggesting suitable new branches? Well, firstly, I think we could look at the bears. Johto gave us Teddiursa and Ursaring as a charming little bear family, but as time went on, we also saw Stuffle and Beware, and at this point we see that they're all normal type. Sure, the pink tropical ones were also fighting, but that's only a little spice. I'm talking about a whole new shakeup to the formula. Because we also saw Spinda, and while based on a red panda, it is a bit more nondescript than that, and it clearly leans into the bear family, also being a pure normal type. Plus, if you're one of those people that count koalas as bears, then there's Komala too, so we should probably branch out. But what could we use? Well, Legends Arceus was a nice step in the right direction, with Ursaluna making it a ground type at least, but it still clung to the normal. I think an appropriate shift for a bear to embrace would be the dark typing. A giant evil bear with glowing red eyes would be truly intimidating. It could even be a literal black bear if we want, because there are indeed different kinds, but it doesn't have to be. And yes, I know that they did make Beartic, but that's different as polar bears are their own separate category. And so the ice doesn't really carry over to the more common bears. And I think the same would hold true for Pangoro, as pandas are off on their own section. But there are plenty of other choices to look through, and here I'm thinking about whales. Obviously we have Wailmer and Wailord that have been taking up room ever since Gen 3, but also many people point to that same generation to Sapphire version with Kyogre, who is a little more abstract, but does still bear a passing resemblance to an orca. Now, as you might have noticed, all of these are water types. Naturally, that is where whales are found, but it doesn't have to be the case. We've seen some fantastical sky whales in other media, and while I won't rule out the flying type entirely, I think a better option would be psychic. Their brains are huge, so there's clearly potential for excess powers, and they can easily use telekinesis to move themselves through the air as well. I could also imagine them as traveling in space. Probably mostly because of Star Wars, but you can't tell me that a gargantuan psychic space whale wouldn't be a hoot to toss out into casual Pokemon battle, both with online players and even random NPCs. I'm going to hit on owls real quick. These unique birds were brought to life by the Noctowl line in Gen 2, and we didn't see it again until Alola with the brilliant starter Rowlet. This was far too big of a gap if you ask me, because these creatures have certain traits that you can't really find on any other birds, but they don't need to all be flying types. I realize that Decidueye died and is therefore not a flying type, but it did have to go through two versions that were first. In the animal kingdom, there are such things as ground owls that neglect their wings, and while that doesn't preclude flying in the world of Pokemon, I think a ground-type owl that lives in a hollowed-out cactus in the desert would be an amazing addition to Pokemon, especially getting to use those wing and beak-based moves on a spunky little dust ball at your feet. Or I even made up a fire-type Fakemon back in the day as a kid, but really I prefer the ground-type angle now, since it not only suits the scenario laid out, but simply embodying the opposite of what you would expect to be is an outstanding trait to have. Now, a common theme that you see is man-made Pokemon. You got some cool groups like ancient culture-based ones, but I'm particularly thinking about the accidental ones. Namely, the fact that there are multiple Pokémon devoted to pollution, and as we know, they all became pure poison types. But should that have been the only one? I understand that pollution is harmful in many ways, but there are different kinds of pollution. I'm thinking here about metal. Scrap metal is a super common occurrence, and we could even see some rust added on. Sure, rusty metal is probably the perfect excuse to make a poison and steel type, but for our purposes we will say pure steel because pollution can be more diverse than that. I mean, just imagine a rusty Duraludon and how scary it would be to get jabbed by those corrupted, malformed fists. Something like that would be a great excuse to make another accidental, human-created Pokémon that also just happens to be terrifying that isn't a poison type. One thing that might sound a little strange is the concept of a beetle. Now obviously this insect is likely to be a bug type, all things considered, and far be it from me to deny the bug type another really cool entry because they do need it. But it's not a necessity, I think. Beetles are such interesting creatures and could be brought to life through multiple other types. This could be another steel type with a giant beetle machine, possibly even steam-powered, but since we already did our rusted pollution monster, maybe we should just use electric instead? Like maybe a 3-stage Flygon type sort of deal, but more grounded as a big, bulky rhinoceros beetle. But I guess we do already have Vikavolt, so maybe we should take that lumbering idea and give it to the rock type instead. Again, there's no reason that it couldn't be a bug type, but if a giant rock creature just so happened to look a little bit like a huge beetle, I don't think anyone would mind if it were just rock, with maybe a little something added in. You could even do it by making them out of crystals or something, because as we all know, we do need more crystalline Pokémon to get across the idea that it is in fact a part of the rock typing. And maybe it would need to be a little more monstrous, like in the art style of older Pokémon back in the Gen 1 days, where they were a little more obscure as to their actual origins, but you could definitely give a colossal beast enough familiar attributes that people would pick up on some inspirations with a sort of cross-species hybrid. So I think given the great beetle Pokemon that we already have, we could find some superb ways of shaking it up in the future with alternate types. There are so many common inspirations within Pokemon that have resulted in multiple standout entries, creating fan favorites or at the very least viable battle partners that would fall into the same family across different typings. Even Cocoons have done it with some success, so it's not out of the question for it to happen again. Maybe just from something that you weren't quite expecting, but when you finally see it, it clicks right into place. Which Pokemon origins do you think need different types? Let me know down in the comments. Also be sure to leave a like, share this video, and subscribe so that you too can become an Imperial today. And until next time, stay grounded.